Islam Makhachev has to be in the GOAT discussion.
That's not ridiculous. That's not ridiculous to say that.
And to be honest, I think he's been in that conversation since the Dustin fight. That performance against Moicano was just straight dominance, and UFC 311 only cemented his legacy further. But we'll get to all of that in the elos, of course. What's up, everyone? It's Trixster here, and UFC 311 has concluded. And yes, I know, I'm actually doing like a face cam today. I was kind of inspired by this comment here. I just thought it was pretty funny. I really wanted you guys to see my face and all that, But yeah, just overall reactions to the card. It was really solid, and, I think it was a really solid card to start the year off with. So, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not gonna lie, I only watched the Peyton Talbott fight and up, but I'm here to give my reactions to the fights. I'm not gonna lie, today's mostly gonna be the casual fights, but I'm here to give the ELO scores, just my analysis on things, so make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down your guys' thoughts on UFC 311. So, Talbott and Barcelos. I'm not gonna lie, kinda disappointing from Talbott. Just because Barcelos was basically put in there to lose against him. If you didn't know, Talbott was a minus 1200 favorite against Barcelos, which is kind of absurd and probably screwed up a bunch of people's parlays. And I mean, fair credit to Barcelos all around. He dominated on the ground the whole fight. Talbott looked defenseless on the ground. I think Talbott was better on the striking, of course. He just couldn't defend against any of Barcelos' takedowns. I've been seeing a lot of things on social media about how the Talbott hype train was derailed, and I was even joking with my friends about this, and it was kind of like a half serious, half jokey kind of thing. But thinking back on that thought, I don't think this is the most major stain on Talbott's legacy so far. He's still really young, and I get the vibe he can take a loss well and learn from it. It's a bit problematic to see that his grappling was just really weak, but of course he has time to improve. Who knows, maybe he goes out there and has a very good grappling display in his next fight. I still have hope for the kid. Kid? Why'd I write that? Jesus, I'm like Dana. Or 7 years older than me too. But yeah, it was just really unfortunate to see Talbott lose like that. I really would like to see him rebound in his next fight with a dominant performance. And I think the UFC matchmakers are, they're probably going to give him a favorable matchup either way. But yeah, we can call it is what it is, a disappointing performance by Talbott all around. Big ups Barcelos. He went out there, journeyman, went in against, an up-and-coming prospect. So respect to Barcelos, I guess. If we were going to take a look at the ELO, 1043.43 is the number for Mr. Talbott. And of course, again, he's still really young. And so that's why I guess I'm not feeling very hard. He lost, but I guess I feel like I'm not being very hard on him just because he does have time to grow and prosper. There's only so many undefeated prospects, and that's just kind of the reality of the sport. And hopefully Talbott can learn and grow from this loss. And if we take a look at Barcelos, I feel like this is generally typical of a chart of a UFC journeyman. He has some wins, so he sticks around, kind of bounces around from win to loss. Interestingly, though, Barcelos is 1-2 against Nurmagomedovs, beating Sayed, but losing to Umar later, so I just thought that was an interesting fact. Next up to talk about, we have Jiri and Jamahal Hill. Jiri Prochazka gets it done again, somehow. This fight was a lot of fun. It felt like this fight could just end at any moment. Both guys were just swinging. Jamahal, of course, doesn't grapple. And it did end at any moment with Jiri getting the knockout in round 3. The power that Jiri has in his hands is genuinely just different. The only person that has more power is Alex Pereira. And on top of that, Alex is actually the only guy to beat Jiri. In wins, Jiri has a 100% finish rate, and he's also only been stopped by getting knocked out. In my last video, I kind of clowned on Jiri's defense and style a little bit, but it just works for whatever reason. I think maybe just because it's so different and unorthodox that no one really has an answer for Jiri striking except Alex Pereira. Because while I'm not too familiar with all of Alex's kickboxing opponents, he probably has fought people with weird striking styles, so I think that's probably why he matched up well against Jiri. But no one else has that answer for Jiri, and it just makes me really feel good to see him win like this and knock out Jamahal. Jamahal got humbled up. Everyone saw the video with him trying to press Alex and then backing off, so I think it was just really funny to see Jamahal also get finished like this. It also is pretty funny looking at the ELO because it doesn't even break 1100 for Jiri. He's only at 1097 because he only has 7 fights in the UFC. It's also pretty crazy that going into this fight, Jamahal actually technically had the higher ELO, and then by the end their ELOs flip-flopped. But yeah, big ups Jiri Prochazka. That was just a really fun fight, and he gets it done by knockout in true Jiri fashion. So, little callback from earlier in the video. Speaking of 1 and 2 Dagestanis, moving on to our next fight that I care about, Merab and Umar. The Tank does it and defeats Umar as the underdog. Going into the fight, I was surprised that Merab was the underdog. People I talked to thought that Umar was gonna dominate Merab. You don't have to believe me, but I did have Merab winning by decision, but I could have seen that fight going either way and just being relatively even in general. Because like stats and stuff, they actually are really even when it comes to everything besides grappling. Maybe people thought that Umar would dominate because of striking, but if we look at significant strikes landed per minute pre-UFC 311, they literally are about equal when it comes to that, as well as the strikes absorbed per minute. Of course, though, Merab does have just superior grappling, and this was also evident by UFC 311, but I'll get to that in a second. Merab gets it done by decision in, a pretty dominant fashion in the last 3 rounds of the fight. At first, it did look like Umar had the upper hand in the earlier rounds. His strikes were landing a lot better than Merab's. Merab's pressure that he had later in the fight just wasn't there in the first 2. But in Merab fashion, he was able to tire his opponent out, which he does time and time again, and just dominated rounds 3, 4, and 5. Genuinely, the chain wrestling of Merab is just unreal. Like, taking down a Nurmagomedov once is a feat for sure, but doing it 6 times, then emoting on him? That's just king shit right there. I can't lie, I've become a pretty big Merab fan as of late. Like, to me, he's just a more likable Colby Covington for some reason. And I don't mean disrespect by that, but Merab is just, I guess, cutesy, if you will. I don't really know a better word. Like, people can say his style is boring or whatever. I get it. Like, he's a pure grappler, but he still goes out there swinging. He's emoting after his just crazy grappling exchanges. Like, I just enjoy his fights a lot. They're just really fun to watch. But for what's next between the 2 men, I think Merab and Jon should fight. I think that's what the UFC should try to get done, and that's what I talked about after the Jon fight that happened about a month ago, so you guys can go watch that. I give my analysis there. And I guess maybe O'Malley versus Umar would be the next for them too. I don't really know who else would fight Umar, but I guess that could be the fight the UFC makes. Okay, ELO time. Umar actually doesn't have that many fights in the UFC, but he does break the 1100s at a current ELO of 1,114.26. And for Merab, with this fight, he was able to break the 1200s with an ELO of 1205, and he moves on up to 31st in the overall rankings. I guess one more note though, Merab ain't getting any older, and I think 2025 will actually be a really crucial year for Merab and how his legacy is defined. If he can beat Jon in a rematch, and hopefully whoever he fights by the end of the year, and if Merab is the one to get more than 3 title defenses at bantamweight, I think that's something I'd be very happy with seeing, and I think that would put Merab at the bantamweight GOAT if he's able to do that too. All right, and finally, our main event of the evening, Islam and Moicano. And like I said at the beginning, straight dominance from Islam. He got Moicano out there and won in just a little over 4 minutes. There's really not much analysis that has to be done for either of these guys. Both went out there prepping for completely different matchups, and Islam just showed why he's one of the best to ever do it. Y'all can hate on me for saying it. It's fine, but Islam has to be in the GOAT talks, at least in the top 3. I still do think that GSP and Jon Jones are still above Islam, but maybe 1 or 2 title defenses later, maybe double champ status, and I think Islam has to be considered the greatest of all time if that's the case. I mean, he is by far the lightweight GOAT. I don't think that's crazy at all to say. And he literally is only 1 more fight away from tying the record for consecutive win streak. And the thing is, he's still only 33 years old. Still a few years away from when he should start regressing. I mean, it's Islam's world. He's beating strikers by knockout, grapplers by submission, getting people who shouldn't be in the octagon with him out in 1 without even breaking a sweat. It's just GOAT behavior. And I guess on that note, it's ELO time. I mean, of course, Islam did not gain too much out of this fight. Moicano only lost 14. Islam only gained about 14, which isn't that much because of the 40K value. Moicano is at about 1,134. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of sad to say, but realistically, this probably will be Moicano's only title shot in his career. I mean, I guess he'll fight Dariush next, but after that, I don't really know. Of course, as I just said, Islam also didn't gain too much out of this, but he does break into the 1300s, which is really cool to say. He has a very solid top 3 score, and, after 1 more fight, he probably will pass GSP in the rankings, so that's just insane. As for what's next for Islam, I think rematch with Charles will be a lot of fun. The Arman fight obviously is a lot of fun if Arman's ready, but yeah, I mean, either one of them I think would be really cool. Anyways, there is UFC 311 in a nutshell. The last thing to note is that Merab actually did break the record for most takedowns in UFC history, which is just a crazy record to have broken. If you're more interested in learning about the stats and records of UFC fighters and champions, I published a video fighting the most average UFC champion, and the results will surprise you. Anyways, with that though, take care guys.